Today we're looking at hair analysis and forensics. So we're getting into the evidence part, the little nitty-gritty, the different parts. And we're looking at hair. So here's a little fun fact. An average person loses 40 to 125 hairs per day. It doesn't mean coming straight from their head. It can come from other parts of their body, but 40 to 125 hair. That would also explain why your hairbrush has lots of hair in it. So here's a little introduction. Hair, what is its function? Why do we have hair? Well, it regulates our temperature. It can keep us warmer. It could keep us colder. It regulates us. It also acts as a sensory organ, which means if I was to go like this and not even touch my skin, but I'm brushing by the hair, I can feel it. Think about cats. The whiskers are kind of in the hair on their face, helps to tell them can they fit in it or not. Not that they always listen, but there's that. And it also protects us. Well, how the heck does hair protect us? If we've got hair, it can protect us from getting cuts. Also, if you've ever done demolition or housework and it's really, really dusty, for instance, if you are sanding down mud on your walls, that fine particle gets up in the air, and even if you have a mask on, you'll notice that there's like white particles in your nostril hairs. It's protecting your body from inhaling all of that. All right, so what about hair and forensics? Well, a careful analysis of hair can provide important clues to investigations, and hair can be considered either class or individual. So remember, class is a group of people, individual is specific person. And how is hair found to be specific? Well, follicles. The hair needs a follicle, and in that follicle, like if I was to rip my hair out, that little tiny part on the end, that white part, that would be a follicle. It contains my DNA in it. And that would link specifically to me being individual. Now, if I was to take my hair and go and cut it, then and analyze that, there's no follicle, so it can't link to me in my DNA, but it can link to a class of people. So based off of that, hair isn't like we don't solve cases solely based on hair. We want to have as much evidence as possible. But one way it's really good is if you have DNA with it. If DNA is attached, you can link to a person, so it really, really strongly helps your case. Otherwise, it's just class, and it's a huge amount of people, just like the Kaylee Anthony case where he said, I can't link it specifically to her because there were no follicles, but I can link it to a group of people that have this color or this type of race. Hair can be collected from crime scenes by plucking, shaping, or shaking and scraping. So like you can shake it out, you can scrape it off, you can pluck it out. There's also like using sticky tapes, you can somewhat get that off, but they don't like using that because the adhesives can interact with the evidence, and that could not be good. If hair is collected as class evidence, remember no follicle, forensic scientists can make observations about the macroscopic and microscopic features. We're getting to that in the next slide. Based on these observations, hair can be narrowed down to a class of suspects. For instance, right here, looking at this, they could figure that it belongs to an Asian person. I'm not going to say female. I'm not assigning sex to it, because I don't know the length or anything like that. And plus, length doesn't mean anything nowadays because it doesn't matter what sex you are, that you could have long or short hair. It doesn't matter. All right, so that microscopic word, what the heck was I talking about? Well, hair can be observed in two different ways. Macroscopic, like the outside right here, macroscopic. How long it is, what color it is it curly, is it not curly, stuff like that. And then you have the microscopic. So macro is big, micro is small. You need a microscope to see this. So pattern of the medulla, pigmentation of the cortex right here. What color is that? Types of scales on the cuticle. We'll get into that in a little bit. So the best microscope to view hair is a comparison microscope that can allow a scientist to view two hair samples at the same time. So right here's a comparison. It's two samples at the same time, and they look like the same. That's what they like to look for. Again, functions of hair. Regulates temp, protects skin, acts as a sensory organ. All right, so the structure. All hair has the same basic structure. It has two parts. You have the follicle and the shaft. So the follicle is down here, and the whole rest of it is the shaft, right? And in that, there are three layers. You've got the cuticle, which is the outside, the outer layer where you see the scales or not. And then you have the cortex. That's this pink area right here. It's not always pink, but it's the middle layer. And then you have the medulla, the inner core of the shaft. All right. So that cuticle, that outer side, it's transparent. It's a layer that covers the shaft. It's made of scales that overlap. So you can see the overlapping scales. It looks kind of like fish scales or something. What's its function? It's to protect the inner layer of the shaft. It wants to protect everything inside. The scales move from the scalp to the end of the shaft. So all the way from here, all the way to the end. Why is this important? Okay, when examining a section of hair, the part of the shaft closest to the scalp is the youngest, and this end can be used to test for presences of toxins, drugs, or metals in the body with a specific time period. So see how long this is? They could age out my hair. How old is my hair based off of this? Well, so far your hair only grows so much in a year. So if it's back so far, oh, I could see that maybe she was poisoned with something 2 weeks ago. They can determine that by just looking at the length of the hair and the cuticle. All right, so the cortex, the inner part, not all the way in, but the inner part, the middle part. It makes up the largest, and that's what you mostly will see in the microscopes. And it contains the most pigment or melanin that gives its hair its color. So if you have red hair, this would be red. If you have black hair, that would be black. If you have brown hair, brown. Blonde hair, blonde. But here's the thing. Say if you were to dye your hair, that is only touching the cuticle part, not going all the way through the cortex. So only the cuticle would have that color that you wanted dyed, whereas the middle part would still be your original color. All right, finally, last but not least, we have the medulla. That is the center of the hair shaft. And it's difficult to see with cheap microscopes, so you need a really good microscope for this. And there's 4 different classifications. So first off, you don't always have a medulla. Some don't, and it's called absent. Then right here you have continuous, and you can see it's very continuous. The one we saw earlier was continuous because it stretched the whole length, no breaks. And then when you have like dashed lines kind of close together, it's interrupted. And finally, when you have like little bits and pieces here and there, it's fragmental. And this is important in determining what race, because certain races have certain medullas or don't have medullas. And besides, okay, so we're done with this. What you need to do now is you need to go read Napoleon Bonaparte, about him, and find out why hair was important in solving the mystery of his death. Besides that, don't forget to Zoom with me, and I hope you guys have a great day.